Today, I would like to welcome one of the rising stars in UK coaching, former assistant coach of the Great Britain under-20s and now director of the Student Athlete Network. I'd like to welcome Coach Josh Merrington.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Coach. Great to have you on. A lot to get into today, especially, your background and, where you were learning your philosophy from. You've worked with a lot of high-level coaches. So let's talk firstly about, where you, were first introduced to basketball and how that, came about to give you this desire to become a coach.
Yeah, so I'm from Milton Keynes originally. When I was growing up, the MK Lions, who are obviously now the London Lions, were in town. And when I went to secondary school, Nigel Lloyd, who was player coach of the Lions at the time, was actually working in my school a couple of days a week, doing some basketball after school and that type of stuff. So yeah, I started playing in year 8, which was, my first year of secondary school. A group of us started to play quite often. Obviously, it was really kind of inspiring to have Nigel there. And I would say towards the end of that first year, we all kind of got put forward for some county trials, which we all made the team. Then we went to some regional trials, and I was the only one from my school who didn't make it. So I actually think it was Matt Johnson who picked the team. So thanks, Matt. So that at that point I was playing all sports. So I was playing like rugby to a decent level. So I kind of decided that summer that I was pretty annoyed that I didn't make the team. So I kind of quit all the other sports I was playing. I don't think my dad's never forgiven me for quitting rugby, but so I kind of decided to focus on basketball from that point forward. That summer, I went to Steve Bucknell's camp down in London, which was down in Crystal Palace, which was awesome. That kind of was my first experience of basketball outside of Milton Keynes. Yeah, it was awesome camp. Like Dean Smith was there. They had Bobby Cremins there. It was really Kevin Cadle was there. It was really amazing camp, and that kind of really inspired me. They gave like a lot of speeches every day after lunch. There'd be like a different guest speaker, and a lot of it was about kind of working hard and committing yourself.
I think I was one of them.
Okay,
I think I may have been one. I certainly was there on the week of Dean Smith on one of them.
Yeah.
Sure. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So that kind of really inspired me, to be honest. And then obviously went back to my school. We had a good school team. Like every year we were kind of at the national final level. Kind of used to go up. They used to have like a final eights competition that we used to go up to. I think it was up in Barrow. We always used to lose to Ellesmere Port, Mike Burton's school. But yeah, we did pretty well in that. And then we entered National League under 15. Our first year, I think we made the semi-final, lost in the semi-final, just as a school team. I think we had one or two guys from other schools, but pretty much the core of our team was just a school team.
Sure.
Then after year 11, the academy system back then wasn't what it is now, but there was an academy just down the road from me in Northampton at Martin College. So yeah, I joined Martin College, obviously where I played for, John Collins and Mark Dunning, two coaching legends.
Just go back to the school situation. A couple of questions. First of all, were you aware of Nigel's playing background? Did you know much about him as a player? Or you knew that obviously he was the Lions coach. And then secondly, were you going regularly to watch the Lions play?
Yeah. So I think, over time we started to realize, how big of a deal it was to have Nigel. Obviously he was still playing at the time. So, our practices were great. Like we would do a lot of fundamental stuff, but we would also play a lot. Our school gym had a big show court, but then 3 cross courts. So if there was a group of us, we'd just play 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 cross court, and Nigel would play with us. So kind of all the stuff that he's telling us to do, he's then doing. And if anyone that knows Nigel knows he likes to talk a lot when he's playing. So we were just kind of learning that way, if you couldn't shoot, he would tell the guy guarding you not to play you. If you couldn't go right, he would tell the guy guarding you to force you right, and all this type of thing. And quickly we just kind of, you start to develop a basketball IQ. And obviously just, watching Nigel and seeing kind of the level of player he was a big inspiration for all of us. We try and, mimic things that he was doing. We used to go to watch the Lions quite a lot. We had a deal with Vince where basically they used to play at Bletchley Leisure Centre on one of the roll-up floors.
Sure.
So we had a deal with Vince where Vince would let us in the game for free. I think it was £5, but Vince would let us in for free as long as we would roll up the floor for him at the end. And the reason we would do that is because they were sponsored by Domino's Pizza, so we'd get a free Domino's Pizza after the game. But also, once the floor was rolled up, we could play 3-on-3 on the court. So we would just we'd roll up the floor, we'd get some pizza, we'd play 3-on-3. Yeah, it was good. And then we also, because of the connections with Nigel, we started going to the road games as well. So we travel on the bus with the team, and as we got a little bit older, we'd practice with them as well. So yeah, it was a great experience growing up.
Yeah, I mean, most of us that have been in the BBL for quite a long time remember Bletchley, and actually was one of the first people to have a Terraflex. I think it was called Terraflex.
Yeah, I think something like that.
I mean, really, I think he might have been one of the few clubs to actually have it outside of the one that was getting pushed around by the league, maybe for some TV type situation. But I also remembered that it was always badly put together, and it would come loose, and the players would go crazy at that times. But listen, that's a really good story. And my last point I want to make, just for a lot of the younger coaches that are listening, this is the problem with basketball in this country. We really have a very poor historical understanding, and someone like Nigel, I don't think people really understand. Nigel Lloyd wouldn't be playing in the BBL if he came here now. He'd be playing in the EuroLeague. He was that good. He was absolutely one of the best players to have played in our country. A guy that was, right from the time he arrived here. So I mean, it's crazy that you're scrimmaging and playing with him. That's great. That's a great story. So you obviously then move on to Moulton. This is the Moulton College, that was at that time like you said, one of the premier academies in the country, and probably down to the fact that, like you said, there were two legends coaching, Coach John Collins and Coach Mark Dunning. Talk to me about that process and what that actually meant to you. Did you start to get a feel that there could be coaching, or you were just still loving the game of basketball from a player's perspective?
Yeah, I think I was still looking at it from a player's perspective. We kind of had like lofty ambitions at that stage, as most teenagers do. I think as you get a little bit older and you kind of get a bit wiser, you kind of understand your level a little bit more as a player. Sure. But yeah, at that point I was still all focused on playing, had aspirations to try and play in the States after Moulton. But yeah, it was, John actually did, as part of the basketball academy at Moulton, we did our level 1 and 2 coaching. So, that wasn't something I necessarily utilized at the time, but kind of later on when I began coaching, it was, it was a big deal, because obviously I didn't have to go through the qualifications. When that first coaching opportunity came up, I already had those qualifications there. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't really thinking on coaching. I was still trying to be a player. But you obviously, subconsciously just kind of taken in so much from those guys at that stage, which obviously when I began coaching, started to use a lot of the things that they were doing.
Okay. So a very fundamental academy, you must have been taught the game there. That, obviously that we'll come back to that and see if that had helped you shape some of your philosophy. What was your next stop after Moulton?
Yeah, so after Moulton, I went to the States. I played at a junior college out there for 2 years, which was, a great experience. Again, the academy system back then wasn't anywhere close to what it is now. So probably, looking back, I probably wasn't ready for the level of competition in the States. I just hadn't really been exposed to it. We played under 18s, and a couple of academy games. There was no EABL or anything like that. So probably just not, from a player perspective, not particularly ready for that. But it was a good experience nonetheless. Again, ended up playing for a great coach. So we had a coaching change after my first season, and the new coach that came in was a guy that had played and coached at Princeton. He's a guy called Howard Levy. I think he's still the all-time leading field goal percentage shooter at Princeton, like something ridiculous, like 66% or something. He's 6'10", so he shouldn't be missing layups. But yeah, so that was a great experience. He kind of brought that Princeton style of play in, which for me, someone who was had some physical limitations, but probably had like a decent basketball IQ and could shoot a little bit. That style of game really suited me. Sure. And we even had, the legendary Princeton coach Pete Carrill used to come to our practices. Wow. And Yeah. And again, at the time, it's just like an old guy on the side. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that he was, an assistant coach for the Kings, or the guy that kind of, led Princeton to all those great achievements. So yeah, looking back now, that was an amazing experience to have him there as well. But yeah, unfortunately, week after my sophomore year, I tore my ACL playing pickup at a YMCA. So I kind of, my plan was to kind of come home, have the surgery, and then go back out. I was supposed to go to Gettysburg College, which was a D3 school in Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Again, a connection through my coach. It was being coached by George Petrie, who was the brother of Jeff Petrie, who was the president of basketball operations at the Kings at the time, Princeton guy. So yeah, I was gonna go to Gettysburg, but I came home, kind of had the surgery, and was at home for a couple of months. And the way I am, I just thought I can't sit around for a whole year. So I'd done UCAS as kind of a backup option if I didn't have any options after JUCO. And I'd applied to Northumbria. So I thought, okay, I'll go to Northumbria. I'll do a year up there. If I'm enjoying it, I'll stay. If not, I'd look to go back to the States. But yeah, I went to Newcastle, kind of, loved it, and decided to stay. And that was actually where I first got into coaching, because I tore my ACL, I couldn't play. And Greg Modzelewski was the coach at the time. He kind of said to me, we can't give you any scholarship money because you're not going to play, but we can give you some money if you coach the second team. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Awesome. And were you? Was there any kind of involvement with the Eagles at that stage? Because obviously Northumbria traditionally is a Newcastle Eagles kind of affiliate university. Yeah. Was there any involvement, or you were just kind of going to games and hanging around?
Yeah, we would. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we practice against them sometimes, like scrimmage against them. If I used to stay out there in the summers, so kind of they would start preseason earlier than we would. So I would do some couple preseason practices with them, and there was a link. Yeah, a couple of they had the likes of like Jamie Glenn and Aaron Nielsen kind of on the end of their bench that would sometimes come down and play with us as well. Sure. So there was a connection there for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So you actually, you became, am I right in thinking you became the head coach of the women's team at Northumbria?
Yes, correct. So obviously coached the second team at Northumbria for the whole time. I went back to playing kind of the end of my first year, played the last 2 years, but then also was the whole time was kind of coached the second team. And if the games clashed, I would go and play. So whoever, my flatmate at the time would be a player coach for the second team, and I would go and play. So, but yeah, when I graduated, because the Eagles kind of managed the relationship with the university, so I was actually employed by the Eagles to coach the second team. Right. So I got to know like Deirdre Hayes, who was coaching the women's team at the time, and sure. After my first year of university, I went back home and then did my level 3 course with John and with Coach Dunning. Did that after my first year of university, and then obviously I had to go back up and kind of be assessed for the season, for the games, which Deirdre Hayes actually did the assessment for me for that time. Awesome. So yeah, kind of got to know Deirdre, and then obviously when I graduated uni, it just so happened that Deirdre was deciding to step down from coaching the women's team to focus on her work with the Eagles. So yeah, they kind of offered me that job, and I kind of took it straight away. Right.
And so this is your first coaching stop. Is there still at this moment, are you starting to like think, hey, this is something I'm really good at? I could definitely further myself into it, or it was that you just loved the game of basketball, you wanted to be involved? That's my first question. Yeah. And then secondly, take us back to those early coaching moments, because now you've got some really interesting, like you've got Coach Dunning and Coach Collins with their, really very, very fundamentally, driven coaches. You've got Nigel, and then you've got the Princeton coach, you've got all these aspects. What did you start taking, in your philosophy first of all?
Yeah, so I think for the first question, I kind of, my last year of university is when Mark Stootle took over the team full time. And Mark is, one of my best friends. And, that kind of time I was kind of losing the passion for playing a little bit, and kind of, I was very aware of my level. I knew that I wasn't going to have a career as a professional, so I was kind of, I would say my last year of university, I was starting to think about coaching a bit more, and I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do moving forward. So I would say around that time is when I started to realize that this is something that I want to do. And I knew that the Eagles kind of employed community coaches at the time, and I was kind of thinking that I would go down that route. Obviously, with the women's job opening up, that was great. And then in terms of how I was kind of shaping my philosophy at that stage, and how I was coaching, it was all based on coaches that I played for, just kind of taking bits from each one. And one thing that I think is really important is, not to steal things and stuff, but not to try and imitate and stuff like that. Like, I was really kind of a big fan of like the Princeton way of playing, which, people always talk about the Princeton offense, but for me, it's a lot more than that. It's a whole style of play, which is obviously, based on.
So explain that, what your, how you interpret that, and and the key components of that style of play.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously Princeton typically were not the most physically gifted teams, but obviously had, high IQ, high skill level. So it's all predicated around trying to limit the possessions in the game, because they'd always get killed on the boards.
Control, yeah.
So it's about, controlling the amount of possessions in the game, kind of playing a very, very patient and deliberate offense. Obviously they have a 35-second clock, so they can do that more than we can. And if you kind of break it down, it's like, about patience on offense, and they're looking for layups and 3-point shots, which obviously now, when the game's driven by all the analytics, that's what everyone's talking about. Kind of that sprawl ball. We want threes and layups. The mid range is bad, blah, blah, blah. So, Princeton were already kind of doing this stuff back in the day. And then defensively, it was more of kind of a pack line defense. So, put pressure on the ball so you don't give up a 3-point shot, but the guys off the ball, they're not denying, they're playing open, they're ready to help. And again, it was all about, the opposite of what we wanted on offense was, we're not giving up any threes and we're not giving up any layups. We want to force everyone into tough contested 2-point shots. So that was kind of, and again, that's kind of defensively what a lot of teams do nowadays. So
for sure, yeah. My only question to that is, the game obviously is built around, basically transition now. I mean, there's a number of aspects, the 3-point line and transition. So how do you, or at this time, were you stressing transition? Because, obviously in Princeton's, kind of rules are that they want the pace of the game to be withheld, so that the game isn't up and down, and there are less possessions in the game. So what were your thoughts on transition at the time?
Yeah, and this is where I'm saying it's important not to just try and imitate, because I kind of, some big differences. The first one is the clock. You don't have a 35-second clock to play with. And also I think, it's a pretty conservative way to play. You're almost playing, not to lose, as opposed to playing to win. So, sure. And it's, a lot of damage limitation. So, especially when you're trying to, help guys improve, you need to put them in positions where they've got to make decisions, accept that they're going to make mistakes. So that's right. I probably took, the defensive philosophy, I think I took more so. And then it was just a lot of the details on offense about, the spacing, how to properly set your man up for a backdoor cut, like these type of things, the type of shots we want to get on offense. But in terms of like pace of the game, I think very much so. We'll always want to try and play in transition if you've got the team to do it.
Interesting stuff, because like you said, one point I just want to raise is that you can go and watch a lot of the videos on how to teach the Princeton offense, but you've actually been within someone that was there and really understood the timing, the spacing, the reads off the cut, and probably, if I'm not mistaken, some of the drill methodology that actually built a lot up, which no offense, but you can't get in a 60-minute video. You just can't. That's months and years of experience. So I mean, that's an incredible aspect you got, and I would be very interested to see you put that on the floor, or your interpretation on a regular basis. Let's slightly move on. So you're doing this at Northumbria. You're finishing up your studies, or you actually had finished your studies?
when I was coaching the women's team.
Yeah, when you were coaching the women's team.
Yeah, so I graduated. The year I graduated in 2012 is when I took over the women's team. Yeah.
Right. And so what was at the end of 2024, the 2014 season, what was that? How did you end up jumping to Charnwood and the Riders situation?
Yeah, so when I was obviously coaching the women's team, Matt Harbour was coaching the women's team at Loughborough. So we had like quite a lot of battles with them. My first year at Northumbria was really a rebuilding year. So obviously Deirdre had stepped down and she'd been the coach there for a long time. And, a lot of the local players also decided to stop playing as well. So it was kind of a really rebuilding year. We had kind of 3 full-time players that were on scholarship. The team was recruited before I got there. We had 3, really good players that were on scholarship, and then they were kind of the only students. And then we had a couple of girls that came in and played on the weekend. So I used to spend like my Monday and Tuesday, chasing people around the uni to try and make sure we had 5 for the Bucks game on the Wednesday. So it's a really rebuilding year, but we had some good battles with Loughborough. And then Matt Harbour kind of spoke to me about, the possibility of a job at Loughborough at the end of that first year. But I was kind of, I was loving life in Newcastle. I was enjoying the job, and I kind of wanted to go at being able to recruit a team myself and kind of to build the women's program there. So yeah, the second year we had a few more players. We'd done okay in the first year. We made the National Cup final, lost to Sheffield in that, and then in the second year we had a really good season. So we won Bucks. We won a real barn burner against Durham in the final. I think it was like 50-45. Yeah, we had like our power forward at the time was like really the glue to our team, and we found out just before the game she wasn't going to be able to play. So we played the game with we had Tiani Clark, who's obviously now at Sevenoaks, who's really good. We had a girl called Leola Spotwood, an American who's really good, Diana Voinova, and then we had a netball player running the point. We also had Sarah Thompson from Scotland, who was kind of a young point guard who played well. So we won Bucks. We also won the National Cup that year after making the final. The first year we won it on a buzzer beater from Leola Spotwood. Some people will say it was a travel, but I'll say she got fouled first. We had the tied game against Cardiff, 7 seconds to go, ball on the side, and managed to get a layup for Leola, which was kind of amazing experience. And then after that second year again, I think at Newcastle I was coaching the women's team, but I was also doing a lot of work in the community. And what Leicester offered me was a job to kind of coach full time without the community stuff. And I obviously knew Russell Levinston from when I was a kid. Obviously being in Milton Keynes, he was kind of Vince's right hand man at the time. So so I kind of I took the opportunity to go to Leicester and take the Charnwood job.
That's awesome. So you go to Charnwood, and am I assuming there was an academy there, or you started the academy?
No, it was already there. It was previously called Burley College, I think.
That's right.
I think Rob might have been the coach initially, and then Barry Lamble did it for a little bit. I think Dave Greenaway did it for a little bit, and I think the year before I got there, Mark Jaron was doing it, but Mark was also doing the Loughborough job. So he and assisting Rob with the Riders. So Rob was kind of really stretched. So I was the first coach to go in there full time, just focused on the academy. And it just happened around that time they'd kind of started to recruit in some talented players, the likes of Josh McSwiggan. So it was kind of a really good time to go in.
Right. And then you, at this moment, now you're going from the women's game, which, you can, be much, much more, ball control and, playing in a different style, which you obviously were successful at doing. Now you're going to Charnwood. Did you change some of your philosophy, or the way you coached, or what's happening at this time from you as a coach?
Yeah, I think so. I think the women's game is probably more of a horizontal game, and the men's game's more of a vertical game, and it's I definitely agree with the fact that as a coach in the women's game, you can have a lot more control of what's going on the floor. So I think it wasn't so much the kind of switching between genders as much as it was the context of what it was. The effect of the university team, we were trying to win. We were playing at the top level of, of course, always trying to develop the players, but, we're trying to win. Whereas the main goal at Charnwood was always to help those kids, to prepare them for the next level, whatever that is for them. So I think that was probably more so the adjustment in philosophy.
So talk to me. You obviously, it's an incredible situation at Leicester. This whole Riders situation is growing and growing and growing. So you're involved with the BBL team. You're linked into Loughborough. Talk to me a little bit about that, and then talk to me about some of the quick, successes of Charnwood and the type of players that you coached there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the infrastructure at Loughborough and at Charnwood and with the Riders is really good. In terms to have great facilities there. Obviously, it's a pretty small town, Loughborough, so everything's pretty easy to get around. And they have that pathway from the academy to the university to the Riders, and it's all kind of interlinked in some way. So yeah, that was great. I think just being around other like-minded coaches as well was really good. So there was a lot of Matt Harper was there, Mark Jerram, Crewmesh was coaching the women at Charnwood. There was a lot of coaches that were around straight away, which is good. And then I think working with the BBL team was great. Rob kind of welcomed me in straight away, and it was great to work with Rob. Kind of seeing that was kind of my first kind of inside look at the professional game as well, and kind of seeing how that works. But yeah, I think Charnwood stuff was really good. I went in my first year, and obviously the kids were already there. We had some kind of third year kids, and I think some of our talented players kind of a bit older. It's kind of they're pretty kind of set in their ways. Some of them it was difficult to have much of an impact and kind of really implement what I wanted to do with them in that first year. Just trying to change everything around the culture, kind of and obviously the kids were all of a sudden, because they had a full-time coach, they were getting more basketball. So it's kind of managing that and making sure that the schedules are right, and the intensity of everything we're doing is good, and you don't want the guys that they're not giving you 100% in practice, but then they're in the gym getting extra shots up in the morning. It's like, well, no, like the first is you got to bring it in practice, and then anything else is kind of additional. So kind of getting the kids to understand things like that was a challenge, and trying to get that that quality over quantity. But yeah, then I think obviously moving into the second year again was able to recruit some players in and kind of mold the players a little bit more. I think we had that second year we won the EABL. We had a good team, and that I would say we were probably the fourth or fifth best team. I think at that time the EABL was kind of at its peak, kind of the mid 20 teens. Was the EABL was kind of really strong. Myerscough, that first year, Myerscough had beaten us like 6 times. So yeah, and then obviously we kind of went on a great run. We had three third year kids. So Andre Aerosol, who's now playing down at Solent, and 2 kids from Gibraltar, Tom Yome and Tim Faver, who were kind of great leaders for our team. And they really, it was my second year with them. They were really able to kind of, be the coaches on the floor and make sure that our philosophy and our cultures were getting through to the rest of the team. So yeah, that was a great memories. Really enjoyed coaching that group of players. And then obviously was there. My final year was a third year. Again, we had really talented team. Probably, yeah, definitely more talented than the team that when we won it in my second year. But probably didn't go through much adversity in the year, because we were just kind of took the momentum from winning it the year before, and we had really talented offensive team. It was probably the most talented offensive team I've coached. Subsequently we kind of came up short against Barking Abbey at the end, and I think the main reason is we hadn't faced a team. Barking Abbey were an incredible team that year. All their guys now doing really well in the States, and I think probably we hadn't gone through much adversity in that season. And I think looking back, kind of the big thing I took away from that season was probably could have created some of that myself. Probably could have shaken things up a little bit to help prepare the guys a little bit more. But no, again, yeah, great memories. And I think the biggest thing, like I said, is just helping the guys move on to their next step and trying to prepare them for that next step. So to see the guys now, obviously it's been I think 3 years since I left there. So see the guys now, some obviously playing professionally in the BBL or NBL, and then also the guys that are not playing but are doing well in the working world. Actually one of my former players from Charnwood actually does a lot of kind of graphic design work and stuff for me at the moment, so that's like a really cool story. Awesome. So just seeing them do well it's pleasing.
2 questions that come out of the Riders Charnwood situation. The first is what was changing from your philosophy? Because now you're coaching full time
Yeah.
with some pretty good players. You're doing the BBL stuff. Are you changing as a coach at this moment? Are you seeing ways to improve your coaching on the floor on a daily basis? Were some of the things that hit you just because, like you might coach 3 times a week before, and now you're coaching every day, potentially 2 or 3 times a day? What were some of those factors?
Yeah, I think that was a big one, being able to get on the floor more, and especially a lot more individual workouts and stuff. When I was at Northumbria, it was primarily just team practice. We'd have like one morning practice every week, which was kind of a fundamental practice, but we only had 2 practices in a week, so 2 team practices, so we kind of had to utilize those for team stuff. So I think it was starting to work a lot more on the individual development of the players, which was big. And I think, well, from my experience, I don't know if other people feel the same, but I think before you start coaching, I wasn't the greatest player, but I felt like I had a pretty high basketball IQ, and I could probably, solve problems in the game and stuff like that. You kind of think, oh, it's easy, I'll just identify the problem, I'll tell the guys what to do, and we'll be good. Obviously, as you start coaching, you quickly understand how much you don't know. And I would say that I was definitely kind of going through that at Lupper thing, kind of taking in a lot more information. And I think probably when you get to the other side of that, you'll probably get to a stage in your coaching career where you've seen a lot and you've done a lot and you've kind of set in your philosophy and what you want to do. But yeah, at this stage I was kind of learning a lot, taking a lot in, again, kind of stealing bits from the other coaches in the program, stealing bits from Rob, stealing bits from Matt Harbour, that type of stuff. But again, it was just is a case of making sure that you don't just imitate, and you actually kind of understand what you're watching, and then try to implement that in the right context with your team.
I've got another question in a minute, but firstly, what was the thing that you took or things that you took away from working with Rob and seeing how he works with the professional team? Was it like motivational? Was it on practice? Was it in the locker room? What were some of the things you looked at there?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously working with the academy kids, it was kind of like pedal to the metal all the time, like go hard every day. Whereas one thing that Rob he gets it right with the pros is when to push them, when to kind of, have a lighter practice and that type of thing. But I think probably the biggest thing was just Rob's ability to motivate the team. Since I've been watching the Riders, I've never kind of seen a game where, the players don't look locked in or they're not ready to go. They might lose a game because they have a bad shooting night, but, they're always going to be ready to go. And I think that was probably the most impressive thing. I mean, the BBL schedule can be rough. So we're playing like a life and death game against Newcastle at home on a Saturday night that we've been preparing a week for. And then we're going up to Manchester on the Sunday to play in a cold gym, and we're doing the scout on the bus. And, Rob's ability to get, the guys up for that game just as much as they were up for the Saturday game at home in front of a packed house was probably, I would say, the most impressive thing. And yeah, you'll see like a Leicester team, they'll always be locked in. They're not going to have a game off. Said they might have a bad shooting night, but they're always going to be ready to go.
Interesting. That's great stuff. Okay, so from Charnwood, what was it that you're coaching the under-20s at this time, GB
Yes.
under-20s. Talk to me a little bit about that, the international, what that was about, how you would, how did that come about? So what was the process there to be on the under-20s as an assistant coach?
Yeah, so I was actually assistant coach with the England under-16 girls before that. I started that when I was coaching the women at Northumbria. We had some really good teams. We got promoted with the 98 generation, so the likes of Savannah Wilkinson, Janelle Grant, Gabby, all those girls that are now kind of graduating college and hopefully will make up our senior national team. Yeah, we had a great tournament with those guys. We unfortunately ran into Germany, who had Satu Sabali on the team, she's just been drafted number 2 in the WNBA, so she was kind of the difference in the game. But yeah, it was great experience there. And then I actually did 2 years with the under-16 girls. So one in Division B, we got promoted, and then one in Division A, which was a little more difficult. Most of the players had kind of moved up to the under-18s, and we had some really talented. We had like Holly Winsburn was on the team, but she was playing a year young. Hannah Jump, who's a girl, an American girl with English passport playing at Stanford. She was on the team, but I think she was 2 or 3 years young. So again, hopefully girls that we'll see on the senior national team soon. But yeah, it was a tough tournament, Division A, big step up. And I was actually planning to take a year off from national teams after that, and that was the year that we won the EABL. So I got a phone call from Andreas, kind of asking if I would be interested, and of course I jumped at the opportunity. So yeah, that's kind of how it came about. The first year was with James and Andreas in Greece. I think it was the 96 and 97 generation. Yeah, great tournament in Greece. We had Greece in our group, and I think I knew it was a big step up. My first role was to scout Greece, and it was a big step up when you're kind of scouting guys off NBADraft.net. And the game they sent me to watch was Greece against USA in Greece in the Under-19 World Cup semi-final. Okay. And Greece should have won. They just missed a bunch of free throws. But yeah, so that was kind of a bit of a wow moment for me. I was like, okay, this is serious stuff now, so we unfortunately lost to Croatia in the quarterfinals of that tournament. We made it through the group stages. We kept, Greece won the group. We came second, won all the other games, but we didn't make it. We lost to Croatia in the quarterfinal. Then the following year, obviously still in Division B, James took the GB under-16s head coaching job. So Lloyd Gardner came in to replace James. So it was me, Lloyd, and Andreas. And that was the year we got promoted out of Division B. So again, typical kind of short preparation window. I think we played one tournament before that in Portugal, where we lost pretty badly to Finland and to Portugal, but beat Belarus. And yeah, we were a little concerned going into the tournament. We kind of, our group, obviously the top two go through in the group, and we kind of looked at it as, it's going to be us and Russia. But we lost the first game to the Netherlands on the opening day. Again, just not prepared at that stage to be ready for the tournament. So yeah, we had a kind of a do or die game the next day with Russia, which we ended up winning against Russia. And then the third day, we needed Russia to beat the Netherlands by a certain amount, or the Netherlands to beat Russia by a certain amount for us to go through. Sure. Fortunately, the rumor was that the Russian coach didn't let his team eat dinner after we beat them, so they were pretty fired up. And they beat Holland by about 16. So it was kind of, our destiny was back in our hands. We went through. We beat who did we beat? We beat Poland in the quarterfinals. Lost again to Croatia in the semifinals, but managed to beat Russia for a second time in a lot more convincingly this time for the promotion. And that was a really good team. And I think one of the things that was really pleasing is 11 of the 12 guys on that team had been through EABL academies. So there was Carl Wheatle, who was obviously played his basketball in Italy, but there was 6 Barkanaby guys, 2 Charnwood guys, Myerscough, one guy from Myerscough, one guy from Itchin, and Danny Evans from Leeds. So 11 of the 12 guys, and also 11 of the 12 guys either playing or going to play in the States as well.
That's a great point. I mean, Neil and Lloyd both mentioned that that the EABL process has been successful. It's been one of the actual things that have gone well in basketball in a structure, although there are a number of people that are still critics of it. Okay, so from this moment in Charnwood, what was this incredible kind of like decision to go to Portugal and to work in Europe at an academy at Sun Life, and what was the process, and then what does that mean for your coaching, because now you're coaching European basketball?
So what Sun Life is, it's a hotel. It's a sports hotel. So it's kind of in a small town in Portugal. It's this hotel that's surrounded by all these great sports facilities, and they host like a bunch of events and tournaments and academies and things like that. So we'd actually been there with the GB20s. And Mark Lloyd, who was the team manager of the 20s, got speaking with the owner of Sun Life, and they kind of came up with the idea to start a basketball academy. They already had a really successful football academy, which they were running in partnership with ProDirect. So Mark Lloyd kind of came up with this idea to run the academy, but obviously couldn't go out there to coach himself. So he asked me if I would want to go. Originally the idea was for me to coach the partner club as well, which was a men's team, which at the time was playing in the Portuguese second division, and also to coach the academy and kind of get hopefully some young British talent over there, kind of expose them to European basketball, and then help them progress on. Unfortunately, had a bit of an eye opener to professional basketball and found out, as we spoke about before, found out kind of a month before going out to Portugal that I wouldn't be coaching the men's team, and I was just going to be coaching the academy. And that was kind of a blow for me, because that was my main incentive to go. I think there was, obviously within the Riders, Mark was doing a great job with Loughborough and Rob was doing an outstanding job with the Riders. So there was nowhere for me to really go.
Oh, absolutely.
And my aspiration, I thought the next step for me in my coaching was, I wanted to be a national team head coach, and I want to coach. But I think before I do that, I need to be the head coach for senior men's team. So at the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Portugal, coach the senior men's team, be a professional coach. And that was kind of what really excited me. Obviously that didn't come to fruition, but I decided to roll with the academy as well. The academy setup was really good. Obviously the players that we brought in would stay in the hotel, where they have, 3 meals a day, like buffet, like good food, the swimming pool, and then like 24/7 access to the gym. So, during the daytime, we would do like our academy work. So kind of individual sessions, strength and conditioning. And then in the evening, they would practice with the partner club and then play with them on the weekend also.
Great. When you went out there, obviously you started watching, the Portuguese league and the style of basketball, European style of basketball, somewhat similar to, the Spanish game.
Yeah.
What did that change your philosophy? Did you change the way you teach? Or were you just, like, I know I'm going to just be myself and continue to coach like you had been at Charnwood?
Yeah, I would say kind of, it was definitely exposed me to different things. I wouldn't say I made huge changes. Obviously the game there is a little more tactical. It's kind of played at a different rhythm, kind of a more free flowing rhythm. The guys play from a young age, so they kind of, do things a bit more instinctively than a lot of our players. But yeah, I think one big thing, I had a really good assistant at the academy who would do a lot of the skill development. So I think that's probably where I changed the most. I think my kind of a lot of the skill development I was doing to that stage was like pretty linear. So it's kind of like, build the skills up step by step, 1-on-0, then 1v1, and then 2v1, 2v2 if it's appropriate, and so on. Whereas my assistant Sergio, he had some really kind of, thinking outside the box ideas, and, he'd use like 3 balls, like use balloons and sticks. And, before I kind of thought that stuff was a bit gimmicky, and I think, sometimes it can be a bit gimmicky, but the way he was incorporating it kind of made sense. And he was also very good at kind of manipulating the rules. So in terms of like the carry, you see a lot of the European players that they look like they're carrying the ball because they have the ball in their hand for so long. And then also, like, that was around the time that the 0-step footwork was coming in as well. So he was kind of one of these guys that had studied that and kind of learned how to manipulate the rules to do different things. And, so that I'd say my approach to skill development definitely kind of changed, more so than my approach to how I think the game should be played.
Interesting. Okay. That's great. And then, obviously, COVID has changed everything. We'll talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing from a coaching standpoint soon. But you came back, you start the Student Athlete Network. Talk to me a little bit about that and explain to us the whole philosophy behind that organization.
Yeah, so that's it's myself and Lloyd Gardner that run Student Athlete Network. Primarily what it is we're like an educational recruitment agent for British universities. So we recruit international student athletes, mainly from America, to come to the UK to get a master's and continue playing their sport, obviously because once their eligibility is done, it's done. So they kind of come to the UK, get a cheaper master's and continue playing their sport. But then obviously one thing we also do is we look to try and provide opportunities for British kids kind of moving on. I think that's something that we both enjoy doing from our time as academy coaches. So when we were in Portugal, we actually were able to get some Erasmus funding. So we had guys out there on scholarship. Then we now have 3 guys, 2 guys from ISCO and 1 guy from Itchen. They're out at FSU in Iceland with Chris Caird. So yeah, that's kind of Erasmus funded through Student Athlete Network. and then also we help British kids that want to go to the States. So a lot of the kids that we used to coach kind of help them move on, and kind of working with a select few players this year. Obviously this year it's tough with COVID, and recruitment's strange because all the guys that are there now can go back, all the seniors can go back. So the coaches kind of don't know if they will or they won't, so they don't know what type of players they need. This year it's really tough, but yeah, we're kind of offering that service, and we're actually in the process, hopefully in the next week or two, of releasing like an online educational course for kids that want to go to the States, for kids, for parents, for coaches. Obviously it's a hotly debated topic at the moment within basketball in the UK, kids going to the States. So yeah, we've spent the last couple of months kind of producing an online course which covers the whole process in detail, and will hopefully be of a lot of value to players, coaches and parents.
It's been a debate for almost all my coaching career, but I won't have a bad word said about sending young people to America, regardless of whether it's for the pure basketball experience or it's for a life experience, because they both have huge benefits to a young person. What I am impressed by what you and Lloyd are doing, and I do know both of you well enough to know that you have real expertise in this area, is that you're giving the parents something, a real an outlet to potentially ask sometimes very some simple questions and sometimes some complex questions, and I think that that's a very, very good service. What I would like to see more, and I hope that the young coaches that are listening to this will take heed of my advice, but is that other coaches from ABL academies who don't have as much experience as you two with this situation would be able to get in contact with you, because there are too many situations where young coaches in this country just think that they know better without actually even asking any questions or advice from someone that's got some real expertise.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always happy to help.
Great. I'm going to come back to where you are at the moment, just at the end, but let's just change slightly tact. You've had this, you've had a great journey. It's far from over. You've got lots to do now, but let's talk about your thoughts on British coaching and this word of the fraternity and stuff. I mean, what's your thoughts of where we are now as British basketball coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a fraternity. I think, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of coaching jobs in the UK because of the academies and the universities. The education element brings a lot of money and jobs into the sport. Are they professional coaching jobs? Probably not many of them, but that's something that they don't have in mainland Europe. And that's something that we can really capitalize on. What we have a lack of in the UK is facilities, obviously, and access to facilities, but it's clubs. We don't have clubs. Without clubs, you're not going to have coaches. And I think we're kind of quite divided. People will go and start their own little thing here and there, whereas obviously in Europe it's the council has a gym which they give to the local club, and that's where you go if you want to play basketball. Whereas in England it's kind of a little more entrepreneurial, and people can go and set up their own things. And I think we need more clubs, which we'll probably get into in a sec. But I think for me there's a lot of jobs in kind of in education which can be paired with jobs with clubs, in EABL and Division 1 and so on and so forth. But I think there's a bit of a glass ceiling for the BBL. I think, and no disrespect to any of the coaches in the BBL, some fantastic coaches like Rob and so on. But I think that the BBL owners need to be a little more ambitious when they're looking at who they employ as coaches. I don't think, they need to put more value on the role of the coach. I mean, when Leicester first started winning and being good, it wasn't because they had a huge budget, it was because they had a good coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that the BBL clubs need to, like how Mark Stoutel has to coach in the 4th division in our country as the head coach for our national team is crazy. That guy should be in the BBL. Lloyd Gardner should be coaching the BBL. He did a fantastic job when he was with the Royals. I don't think people appreciate how well he did with that team. Often, didn't have many guys. I know they had issues with practice and so on and so forth. So, did an incredible job with them. Solent Kestrels have just won 50 games in a row in D1. And how many BBL teams are calling Matt Guyman? I don't know. So
well, I mean, yeah, it's the same as like I said about Junior Williams as well. Before Lloyd got to the Royals, I mean, Junior had done an incredible job with them as well, and he won a trophy in his first year, and he's no longer involved in in professional basketball, and it's simply down to the problem that we've always had, which is there isn't an urgency to win, and there is no coaching turnover. I mean, and there are a number of reasons for that, but there's no hiring to firing culture in our country. There's the coaches that are there have really long tenured, and we, as well as I do, there are times in Europe that if you can go on a four game losing streak, you'll be fired. So yeah, it's a tough one, but and you are absolutely right. I mean, there's just no coaching movement in those type of jobs, and of course there's no professionalism in EBL 1 either, so it's a really tough situation to how that we could perpetuate a better system for professional coaching in this country. So really good point there, Josh, really good point. Really quickly, thoughts on coach education in the UK. You said that you went through your level, 1, 2, and 3, basically with Collins and a little bit with Coach Dunning. What's your thoughts? Have you been approached about, being involved in coach education in this country?
No. I think just quickly that's a big thing. We need to make sure that we have the right people delivering the coaching courses. I was lucky to have John for my level 1 and 2, and John and Coach Dunning for my level 3. So I was lucky, but some of the people that deliver our coaching courses in this country are, they're not involved in the game at any level. We don't have our best coaches should be, our national team coach, our best coach in the country should be the ones coaching the next generation of coaches. I think we desperately need the BCA back. I think, hopefully that I know there's been talks, but hopefully that will come about soon. I can probably count on one hand the amount of clinics, worthwhile clinics that have been in the UK since I've been coaching. I was one of the guinea pigs for the clinic at Malton when Johan Plaza came. I don't know if you were there, probably. Yeah. So I was one of the players. I think Dunning gave us a free pair of Nike shoes for giving up our weekend. That was a great experience for me as a player, and obviously I'd love to see that type of thing. And I understand that. I think the coaching qualifications as well as we need to make sure we have the right people delivering them. They probably need to be a little more rigorous. I'm a level 3 coach. When I went to Portugal and they kind of converted what was on it, they only made me a level 2. So, which shows that even, with national team experience and so on, they said, our level 3 only equates to their level 2. I understand the argument of if you make the coaching qualification too difficult, you don't have enough coaches and you don't get enough kids playing. I think we probably need some type of activator award. I don't know if we have one, maybe we do. Some type of activator award for people that just want to coach like a community and recreational level and get kids involved in the game. Absolutely. But then for people that want to coach National League and especially coaching professionally, like those coaching qualifications need to be more rigorous.
Okay, really good. What now is the future for you as a coach? You talked to me a little bit offline about what you're involved with now. What's your aspirations, and what's the short term looking like?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm back in Milton Keynes now. Obviously forced home by COVID. And as I mentioned, when I was a kid growing up here, the Lions were in town. Basketball was really big. There was a lot of stuff going on. But when the Lions left, unfortunately, that kind of died a little bit. So, Mike New is stuck around and is doing stuff. Nigel is now working in a different school, producing some players every year. But there's just not enough kind of going on. So I've kind of always had the aspiration to move home to Milton Keynes and to start my own club, because I think it's an area with huge potential. It's it's a growing city, population of almost 300,000, and there's no limited basketball here, and not much on the outskirts either. So yeah, I've teamed up with a guy who's, a retired businessman who has built a really good community club. There are about 350 kids playing every week, and the club's all very well organized, and we're in this process now of trying to build that club. So we entered 4 national league teams this year: under 12, under 16, under 12, under 14, under 16, under 18 boys. Unfortunately, the season obviously got canned, so we couldn't play, but we plan to re-enter those teams next year. Also to enter a men's team, we're looking to enter a girls team, probably under 14s. So yeah, just we're going to start a schools program, really try to get a big player base at a young age, and and build the club from the ground up, very much a bottom up philosophy, trying to get basketball back ingrained in Milton Keynes.
Awesome. 3 quick questions before we go. Favorite all-time basketball coach?
I'm going to say Bill Self, Kansas.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Always. I actually saw them play live last year at the Maui Invitational in Hawaii. So that's pretty cool.
That's a great trip. I wish I was there for that one. That's a great. Favorite go-to saying or statement?
Progress over perfection.
Oh, I like it. I like that. Progress.
You can steal that one, Tony.
Yeah, I will steal that. That's an awesome one. And then favorite drill?
4v4 cutthroat, the Mark Dunning Classic.
Oh, yeah, Mark Dunning Classic, exactly.
Yeah.
I use it. I'm now made that a little bit different, but I stole the one off of Greg Popovich at San Antonio, because he's actually got the cutthroat, but it's 4v4v4. But that's great stuff.
Yeah. So 4v4v4 with the synergizing and the team coming in from the baseline. Yeah, it's my favorite drill as a player, and my favorite drill as a coach.
Yeah, awesome, great stuff. Coach, listen, I really appreciate your time. I think that as with most of the talented younger coaches, I mean, this is just really a mid-stage journey, and I'm pretty certain that in the future you're going to have much more success, and I hope to see you back on the front line of elite coaching much sooner than rather than later. That's for sure. But I really appreciate you being on Time Out Coaching for today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Tony, and keep up the good work. These are great.
Thank you.